Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Femi. I'm 28 years old, and I was born and raised in the US. I never thought I'd be sharing this story, especially not one that sounds like it came out of a movie, but it's real. Every word. And if you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, I hope you'll listen until the end, because everything changed for me the day my uncle whispered a secret that flipped my entire life upside down. And for once, being the black sheep saved me. It all started at a funeral. My uncle Leonard had passed away after a long illness. He was my dad's older brother, a quiet man, private, wealthy, very wealthy. He never had kids of his own, never married, and well, he barely spoke to me after I turned 16. The rest of the family didn't like me much either. I was the problem child, the one who dropped out of college, moved to the city, dyed her hair pink, and worked in a tattoo studio, the one who embarrassed the family name. So when I showed up to the funeral, I got the usual looks. Judgy stares, fake smiles, whispering behind programs. My cousin Chelsea even leaned in and whispered, "You still have the nose ring?" Bold. I smiled. Fake, just like them. But what nobody expected, not even me, was that I had visited Uncle Leonard 2 weeks before he died. It was unplanned. I was in town for a gig, past the old manor, and something told me to stop by. He looked frail, thin, like he was already halfway gone. But when I walked into his room, he smiled. "Femi," he said, "you came. You always had more guts than the rest of them." That line stuck with me. He asked about my life, my work, my apartment. He even asked if I was still painting. I hadn't touched a brush in 3 years, but somehow he remembered. And just as I was about to leave, he said something that still gives me chills. They think I'll leave everything to them. But they don't know what I know. I didn't ask. I didn't want to push a dying man, but I wish I had. Because the real storm started after the funeral. We were all called into his lawyer's office for the reading of the will. The room was tense. Chelsea was there, of course, dressed like she was attending the Oscars. My dad, my aunt, a few distant relatives I barely recognized. Nobody looked at me. The lawyer, Mr. Alton, opened a thick folder, cleared his throat, and began. "To my nephew Charles, I leave my collection of antique watches." My dad nodded, expected. "To my niece Chelsea, I leave my collection of art books." She smiled smugly, also expected. But then, to my niece Femi, I leave the following. The room went silent. Mr. Alton looked up, then back down at the page. The deed to Hawthorne Estate, the savings and investments under account LQ 1993, and sole rights to the Leonard Benson Art Trust, totaling $3.2 million. I swear, the air disappeared from the room. Someone choked. I think it was my aunt. Chelsea muttered, "What the hell?" And I just froze. What? Me? They all turned to me. They're black sheep. They're outcast. And in that moment, I saw it, the fear. But the real story wasn't in the will. It was in the letter Mr. Alton handed me afterward, a sealed envelope addressed in my uncle's handwriting. "To Femi, when the dust settles." Inside was a single page. He wrote, "You were always different. Not because you rebelled, but because you saw through the performance. I once made a mistake, a big one, and I never had the courage to face it. That trust fund you just inherited? It was created after I sold a painting. Not just any painting, yours." He went on to explain that when I was just 13, I had painted something for fun during a summer visit. A portrait of an old man in a rocking chair. I barely remembered it, but he had taken it, and he sold it to a gallery. It became the centerpiece of an exhibit called Childhood Without Chains. He never told me, but he saved the profits. Every dollar. And when he got sick, he wrote into the will that it was mine, because I had been the artist all along, the heir, not just to his estate, but to the truth. The others still haven't forgiven me. They think I manipulated him, that I tricked him into giving me everything. But I don't care, because now, for the first time in my life, I'm not just the black sheep. I'm the one who was finally seen. The days after the will reading were chaos. My phone didn't stop buzzing. Calls from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Most went to voicemail. Some left messages that started sweet and turned bitter. "Hey, Femi, hope you're well. Just wondering if Uncle's lawyer maybe made a mistake. Be a dear and call me back. We should talk about the estate, family to family." And my favorite, "You know you don't deserve it. Everyone knows what you are." Even my dad tried. He asked me to reconsider the inheritance. said it would be fair if we split it 3 ways. I almost laughed. This was the same man who once said I was the stain on our family's name, who told people I'd never amount to anything. And now, suddenly, he was interested in fairness. But what haunted me most wasn't the money. It was the painting. I had no memory of it, at least not clearly. But one night, I found myself digging through a box of old sketchbooks I'd kept in storage. And there it was, a faded charcoal outline of a man in a chair, heavy lines under his eyes, a crooked wrist, a loose cardigan. It was him, Uncle Leonard. I had drawn him without even knowing what it meant. Back when I was just a kid, trying to make sense of the world through pencils and silence. He had taken that image, made copies, sold the original, and kept the money in my name. But why didn't he tell me? Why carry the secret for 15 years? So I went back to Hawthorne Estate. It felt different now, not just like an old house, but like a question waiting for an answer. In his study, the same room where I had once spilled ink on the carpet and cried because I thought he'd be mad, I opened a drawer I had always been afraid to touch. Inside were dozens of photos. Me, smiling, painting, laughing. Uncle Leonard had saved everything. Birthday cards I made him at age 10. A newspaper clipping from my first gallery submission, one I didn't even know was printed. A sticky note that said, Femi, the one who saw the world clearly before the world clouded her. Tears came hard and fast. This wasn't just inheritance. This was legacy. And for the first time in my life, I felt worthy. But it wasn't over yet, because at the very bottom of that drawer was another envelope. And this time, it wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to Chelsea. Absolutely. Let's continue the story from the moment Femi finds the mysterious letter addressed to Chelsea inside Uncle Leonard's desk. I stared at that envelope for what felt like hours. Chelsea, the golden child, the family favorite, the one who once told me I'd never be one of us. Why would Uncle Leonard write to her? I shouldn't have opened it. But I did. And what I read made my stomach twist. It wasn't long, just a single page, handwritten like mine. Chelsea, you've lived a life built on stories others crafted for you. You believed them because they were easier than the truth. But you are not who you think you are. Your mother knew, your father knew, and I kept the secret because I thought it would protect you. But lies rot in silence, and by now, you deserve to know. You are not Charles's daughter. You are mine. I froze. My first instinct? Denial. But the letter continued. In 1995, there was a night I should have never let happen. Your mother, Diane, was lost, and I was grieving. We were both lonely. A mistake, yes, but a life came from it, you. I stayed away because Charles raised you, because he needed something to make him feel like a man again. I gave him that. I gave you both distance, and in doing so, I lost a daughter I never got to know. Femi thinks she's the black sheep, but in truth, you were the ghost, and I never had the courage to bring you to life. I hope one day you'll forgive me for letting the wrong child carry the weight of the family's shame. I had to sit down. The silence in that room was deafening. Chelsea was my cousin and my half-sister, and she didn't know. Suddenly, so much made sense. Why Uncle Leonard always looked at her with a strange softness. Why he treated her carefully, almost like glass. Why, no matter how nasty she was, he never reacted. He was guilty, and now he had passed that truth on to me. I didn't know what to do. Burn it? Hide it? Tell her? She would hate me. She already did. But then came the knock. 3 sharp raps on the door. It was her, Chelsea, tear-streaked, furious. I know what you're doing, she hissed. I talked to a lawyer. That can be contested. You manipulated him, or he wasn't in his right mind. You think you're better than us now because you got lucky? I didn't respond. I just handed her the letter. Her hands shook as she opened it. Her eyes scanned the page. Once, twice. Then she dropped it. No, this is a lie. This is some sick trick. Why would he say this? Her voice cracked. Her legs gave way. She sank into the leather chair behind her. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel smaller than her. I didn't feel like the outsider. I felt like the only one in the room who truly understood what it meant to be unwanted, then chosen. She didn't speak again. She left without a word, didn't take the letter, didn't even close the door. I thought maybe I'd feel victorious, but I didn't. I felt tired of the pretending, the years of silence, the inheritance of shame. And that's when I decided the money would stay in my name, the estate too. But I wasn't going to let the past keep swallowing the people it left behind. So I wrote 2 letters that night, one to the lawyer, reaffirming my right to the estate, and one to Chelsea. All it said was, if you ever want the truth, not from a will or a letter or a lawyer, but from someone who knows how it feels to be abandoned by the people who raised us, call me. She never did. At least not yet. But I left the door open. Because maybe being the black sheep isn't about being bad. Maybe it's about being the only one who dared to see things for what they really were. And maybe, just maybe, that's what made me the rightful heir all along. 6 months passed. I hadn't heard from Chelsea since the day she walked out of Hawthorne Estate without the letter, without a word. I told myself I didn't care. But every time the mail came or my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number, I wondered, was it her? It wasn't. Not until December, Christmas Eve to be exact. I was painting in the back room, something abstract, something angry. Red and black, smeared across the canvas like I was trying to claw out everything I couldn't say out loud. Then came a knock at the door. Slow. Measured. The kind of knock you hear in movies when a ghost finally returns home. I opened it. It was Chelsea. She looked different. No makeup. Dark circles under her eyes. Her hands were stuffed deep in her coat pockets, like she was keeping herself from falling apart. Before I could speak, she said, "Do you have a minute?" I nodded and stepped aside. We sat in silence for a while. She didn't comment on the house, didn't mention the paintings. She just looked at me. Then she said, "I got a DNA test." My heart skipped. She pulled out a folded paper and handed it to me. It confirmed everything. She was Uncle Leonard's biological daughter. But what shocked me wasn't that she had tested it. It was what she did next. She reached into her coat pocket again and pulled out a key. This was in a box Mom left me before she died. I never knew what it unlocked, until I went through Dad's office last week. She placed the key on the table between us. "I found a hidden drawer behind the bookcase," she said. "There are journals, letters, pictures of you, of me, of him." My throat tightened. "He wanted to tell us," she whispered. "He just never did." For a long time, neither of us said anything. She wasn't crying, but she looked like someone who had finally stopped running. "I hated you," she said softly. "You got everything I thought was mine, and then I found out you were the only person who didn't lie to me." I didn't know what to say, so I just said the truth. "You weren't the only one lied to. We both were, just in different languages." She laughed a little, bitter, but real. "I don't want anything," she said. "Not the money, not the house, not your sympathy." She stood up. "I just want to know if it's too late to start over." I stood too. And for the first time in 20 years, I saw her. Not the polished version of Chelsea, the one who lived to win, to impress, to dominate. But the girl underneath, the one who never knew who she really was. The one who thought love came in competition, not connection. And in that moment, I didn't see my enemy. I saw my sister. I picked up the key and pressed it back into her palm. "Come back tomorrow," I said. "We'll open it together." She didn't answer. She just nodded. And then she walked into the snow, not as a rival, but as someone finally willing to face the truth, with me, together. She came back the next morning. No makeup, just jeans, a wool coat, and that same quiet energy, like someone walking into a place that once haunted their dreams. I had already cleared the room. The fireplace was lit. And the bookcase, yes, the old oak one, was pulled slightly away from the wall. Behind it, the panel was exactly where she said. I had checked it the night before, but I hadn't opened it, not without her. She stood beside me now, the old brass key trembling slightly in her fingers. "You ready?" I asked. Chelsea nodded, but didn't speak. She slid the key in. Click. The panel swung open. Behind it was a black, narrow drawer, so well hidden it looked like it was part of the wall. Inside, there were two things, a leather-bound notebook and an old cassette tape. Chelsea picked up the notebook. I picked up the tape. We looked at each other, then sat down side by side on the living room rug, just like kids. She opened the journal slowly. The first page read, "For my daughters. Both of you. I pray one day you read this together." Her breath caught, and I felt something shift in my chest. She began reading aloud. Our father, Leonard, had written everything, not just about us, but about his guilt, his shame. his reasons. He had always known he couldn't raise Chelsea as his own. He thought it would destroy his brother. So he stepped back, watched from a distance, provided when he could. But he watched her grow up, and the more she became like him, creative, moody, meticulous, the more it broke him that she had no idea. He wrote about me, too, how he saw in me a freedom he never had, how I reminded him of his mother, who painted wild and barefoot under the porch in summer. And then he confessed something I never expected. He never planned to leave the inheritance to me. At first, it was always going to go to Chelsea. She was the firstborn, the legacy. But one day, after I sent him a letter I never knew reached him, something changed. He never said what the letter said. But I knew, because I remembered writing it. I was 17. I had just been kicked out of the house for getting my first tattoo. I wrote to him in desperation, told him I felt like a ghost in my own bloodline, told him I didn't want money or love, just truth. And he heard me. He wrote, "She asked for nothing, and in doing so, reminded me what love is supposed to look like." Tears streamed down my face. Chelsea wasn't crying, but I could feel her fighting it. "I hated you," she whispered. "So much." I nodded. "I hated me too." She smiled, just a little. Then we turned to the cassette. Old, dusty, unlabeled. I didn't even own a tape player, but Chelsea did. We went to her place that evening. She pulled out an old stereo from her closet, something she hadn't touched in years, and slid the tape in. Static. Then a voice. Our father's. Low. Raspy. Calm. "Hello, Femi, Chelsea. If you're hearing this, then I've left the cowardice behind." He talked about our childhoods, the things he never said in person, per se. The nights he sat outside our windows just to see us. He described our mothers, Diane and my mom, Amelia, with so much heartbreak I could barely listen. Then came the final words. "I loved you both. In different ways, but I was too afraid to love you out loud. Don't inherit that from me. Please. In the end, the truth is all we really leave behind." Click. Silence. I didn't realize I was holding her hand until the tape stopped. We sat like that for a long time. No arguing, no accusations, just stillness. The kind of stillness that only happens when a storm finally passes. "I don't know what this makes us," Chelsea said. "Sisters," I said, "whether we like it or not." She laughed, and this time it wasn't bitter, just tired, but hopeful. And for the first time in our messy, broken family, that was enough. I was the black sheep until Uncle's deathbed confession made me the heir. Written in a natural, cinematic English style with no section breaks, this ending ties together the transformation of both Femi and Chelsea as they finally reclaim their truth and choose their own ending. It's been 1 year. 1 year since the will. 1 year since the letter. 1 year since my entire world cracked open and somehow rebuilt itself into something quieter, softer, real. Chelsea and I still talk. Not every day, not always easily, but there's something between us now that wasn't there before. Honesty. We've visited the estate a few times together, walked through the halls, remembering what we used to be, the spoiled princess and the bitter misfit. Now, we're just two women who inherited a broken legacy and decided not to pass it on. The art trust Uncle Leonard left me, I've turned it into a scholarship for kids who were like me, misfits, the kind who get told their expression is a phase or problem. Now they get funding for art school. No judgment, just belief. Chelsea came to the launch. She didn't make a speech. She stood in the back, arms folded, watching me. But when I stepped down from the stage, she smiled. "That was very un-black sheep of you," she said. I smiled back. "Maybe I'm turning gray." She laughed. For real this time. We're not best friends. We don't braid each other's hair or call each other sis every time we talk. But she sends me postcards now. Photos from the towns she visits. One said, I saw a girl painting on the sidewalk today. I thought of you." I keep them on the fridge. Sometimes I think about Uncle Leonard, about how he watched us grow up from the sidelines, haunted by his own silence. And sometimes I still feel angry that he didn't do more, didn't say more. But mostly I just feel grateful. He gave me a house, but more importantly, he gave me the truth. And that truth gave me back something I never thought I'd find. A family, a voice, a reason. So if you've ever been called the black sheep, if you've ever been pushed to the edges of your own bloodline, remember this. Maybe you weren't meant to fit in. Maybe you were meant to break the pattern. And maybe, just maybe, One day, someone will look back at your story and thank you for being the first to rewrite it.